So today I want to show you some tips and techniques to help you when you go to work with your watercolor. So the first thing that I want to show you is, yes, there's a brush provided for you in your watercolor set that you can use. I would take and rinse it first thing when you go to use it to make sure if there's any paint left in it, it's cleaned out, okay? Now, yes, we are sharing some watercolor sets at your table. If you're having some issues with color showing up where it shouldn't, so for example, if I wanted to use white with my red but not green, there's a few ways that you can clean these. So you might take a wet wipe at your table and just very gently go over that top layer, and that can help to remove, or a wet paper towel would do the same thing, but that can help to remove the color. Now make sure that then you don't take that same area, and you want to be careful that you're not like scooping the paint out. But this is one way that if you have a dirty set of watercolors that you can take and kind of clean up that area, wet paper towel or a wet wipe. Remember, you want to activate the colors. So how you can do this is to take your brush and whatever colors you're going to be working with, let's say I'm going to work with red and yellow and orange, I can take and put a few drops of water. I'm just squeezing my brush over to add some water to it. Another way that you can activate your colors is to just take and stir up the colors. Now you'll notice there was a little bit of green there, so my yellow is turning a little bit of green, so then I can just clean off that top layer again, okay? And then I can take and stir up my paint really well, okay? Now, instead of mixing on your watercolor lid, I'm going to have you mix in your paint palette set. Okay, so you should have your paint palette. So for example, let's say I wanted to work with yellow. I could take and move some of the yellow here. I can also take and add some water to it. So how much water you add to your paint also controls the value of it. So for example, let's say I want to pull some red here. I can start by just taking some water, and then I can take a little bit of my red, mix it in. Now notice when I start to paint with it, because I have a lot more water than paint, it's gonna be very, very light. Now if I want that to be darker, I can mix it around a little bit more in my paint, bring more paint over, and now you'll notice it's a lot darker. So as I begin to paint, remember, take your time. You might use your brush to kind of outline around your edges. The other thing to consider is, would a larger brush help you? So for example, if I was painting this large area right here, it might be helpful to take and use the larger brush to fill in that area. Okay, especially when you're doing water blends, using a second brush or a larger brush that can hold more water can work really well to create those soft blends that you might want in an area. Okay, so after you have part of your area filled in, one thing I want you to watch is you don't want to paint right next to it. So do not do this where you paint in a space right next to a space that's already been painted, because as you can see, it's starting to bleed into that area. The orange is bleeding into that area. Okay, if that happens, what you can do is blot that area, but you can see it's kind of a struggle to keep it once it crosses over that line. So you can kind of dry that area and then take your brush, repaint, and try and keep it back away from that edge, okay? Now let's say you make a mistake like this. Whoops, I went over the line here. So I could take and blot it with my paper towel, which will pull up some of that color. Then I can take my brush, I want it to be just some clean water, and I can take and just use the water right over that area. Again, clean paper towel, and I lift, and what that does is it helps to pull the color out of the area where I've made the mistake, where I don't want that color to go. And then once it dries completely, then I can come back in with another color and paint over the top of it. So what you can do if you're wanting to paint like a pattern here, you could pick one color only and figure out all of those areas that you want that color to go. And then I'm going to go work in a different area on the opposite side of my paper while this dries, and then I can come back and paint in the other areas that I want to have different colors.